To explain the plays, I'm Uncorrupt. We're going to be playing some Thief Rogue today. Pretty straightforward on the Mulligan here. This is a Maestra deck, so we would want to keep our tradables, we want to keep Knolls. Jackpot is actually a keep, and believe it or not, Queen Ashara is actually a keep. The Mulligan win rate on this card is really good. We're going to keep these and toss the other stuff. Jackpots discount our Knolls. It's also going to activate Queen Ashara. So potentially we can go turn 2, turn 3, and then coin this out on 4. Looks like we're playing a 40 health Flat Earther here. So he's going to be looking to draw into Lady Prestor for sure. That is unfortunate. We're just going to have to play into it. So unfortunately, card draw on both of these. It's not good. So next turn they're going to be able to tutor out the Lady Prestor. All of our stuff is becoming more expensive. It's got to be Gigafin, right? So next turn we can coin Tess, and then the following turn we'll be able to Horn and play a 1-mana Colossal. Till then we're just going to be drawing expensive cards and taking a little bit of damage, but shouldn't be anything too out of control here. I would be shocked. Oh wow, he just wants to draw more cards. Maybe he tutors out the Prestor next turn? We're going to be really dependent on the Colossal that we get from Horn of Ancients. Unfortunately, no Knolls this game, so we're getting off to a slow start. And we're just taking a beat down. I'll play Prestor next turn, and then they'll be able to draw a bunch of stuff. Interesting that they would rather draw these than... once it's been converted to dragons. They're really valuing their watch post here, which I don't think is that big a deal. Double watch post. Clear the watch posts. But I think the better play is to still just go for the Colossal and take a trade. Let's see what we get. Yeah. So we're going to do this. We're going to kill this one. We want him to go ahead and draw a card now before it's turned into a random dragon. And we're going to get this lag out. Could have made the trade here to try to protect our stalks, but he plays Prestor. He can take one trade. And we'll have 9 damage from stalks. Could even just Gigafin. Maybe it's better to save Gigafin for when they play a bunch of cheap dragons. I really don't think this deck is all that good, but there's a lot of people playing it. He goes for the silence. So he actually makes his play worse. No direct damage in this deck until after the Prestor, so I think we just go ahead and Gigafin. They're not going to be able to remove the Gigafin. Yep, I believe so. Now it's our turn to punch face. We have 20, we have 23, we have 27, our opponent's at 31. We also have a Gigafin in Tess and Contraband stash now as well. We're looking for something to be able to deal with our board, most likely. Random damage. It's not going to do a whole lot. Easy for us to remove as well. Like our opponent is still going on a lot of spells in their deck after hitting this. They're still not removing a whole lot of damage on the board, but this is just really annoying. This is really annoying. They're out of cards, though. Contraband stash. We'd replay a Gigafin as well as a lag. I think it's worth just go as wide on the board as we can. Ah, but the Gigafin doesn't eat. You learn something every day. We are not missing damage to the face for sure, I can tell you that. But we do need to remove this. And we'll just pass turn from here. So our opponent only has 2 cards in hand. That's an important thing to keep in mind, is that the Gigafin that's replayed actually doesn't eat your opponent's board. First time I've ever had a Gigafin in a stash, so key learning there. Hopefully that's something that can help you as well. Our opponent's totally dependent on their random dragons, and it looks like we're just going to kill them. At 23, we have 26 on board, as well as damage in hand. Flat Earth, 40 health, 40 card deck down. We're going to be moving right on to the next game. Like we're against Mage this game. This has to be that big spell Mage. The only keep is going to be the tradable here, the Cutlass. We'll make our trade. We'll likely just reconnaissance. We can reconnaissance the following turn as well. We have ways to be able to generate cards from other classes, so we'll be able to get our nulls free. We're not necessarily concerned about staying in disguise here. That's going to be the armor secret. So we're actually just going to go ahead and kill this with a tooth. And we're going to use the expensive tooth so that way we can spend all of our mana. Draw a Naga and a spell. We don't have any Naga. Aid Station can be good if we end up with a wider board. Also, getting this into our stash isn't bad either. And we're going to go ahead and remove this with second tooth, and then we can reconnaissance or even prep reconnaissance. Is it Farsight or Power of the Wild? I think maybe we just want to put minions in play. I'm going to summon a 3/2 Panther here. I'm going to save the preps, but I want to spend the preps before my opponent is able to play their Naga that switches the cost of spells. Maybe even I try to empty all the spells out of my hand. I'm going to use a prep here for this reconnaissance. Between these, I think it's the Divine Shield minion here. We're just going to go ahead and get this in play. Next turn, we may actually get the Stormpike aid station in play as well. There's a Knoll. I'm going to check and make sure this isn't a counter spell. That's health only. Alright, it is Ice Barrier, which is fine. So we can prep the reconnaissance. This costs 2. It's going to have the most attack. And we get our Knoll in play and the aid station. So this is going to add a lot of health to our board that's in play. I wanted to get as many minions on the board as I can to be able to take advantage of the Stormpike aid station. We only have 1 spell in hand, so that's going to make, when they play the, I think it's Barbaric Sorceress, the Naga, it's a 6 mana card. We don't want any spells in our hand, so that way they can't get the cheap. Unfortunate. That way they can't get the cheap, the cheap Rune of the Archmage or Drakefire Amulet. Still going to be able to continue to buff the health of any minions that are remaining on the board. Would love to see... Oh! And our opponent concedes. We were in a pretty good position here. I don't know that that's a correct concede from our opponent. We only had 1 card in hand and our position wasn't super dominant. I think they were likely still in the game, they just gave up too soon. So one thing that I would note about that is just make sure that you don't concede too early. There's going to be games where you're going to be frustrated, you're going to think things aren't going well, or my opponent is high rolling, or they're playing well, whatever the case may be. You don't want to concede too early because sometimes you can still win those games. You know, your opponent could misplay, you could draw exactly the card you need, so on and so forth. So hang in there in those tough games. And we're going to move on to the next. It's like a Druid again. This is probably another one of those 40 card, 40 health flat earther decks, would be my guess. Exactly the same deck that we played against game before last. We're still looking for the same stuff. We're not keeping any of that. Just going to be trading on turn 1. Would like to be able to hit an early jackpot with the Trickster in hand. If not a jackpot, at least a Blood in the Water, just so we can make use of the Trickster on turn 3 or turn 4. However that's going to work out for us. And do we see Prince Renathal? We do, so pretty sure I know what we're up against here. It's going to be that Lady Prestor deck. We might face some early pressure, but nothing too overwhelming. They want to play Lady Prestor on either turn 5 or turn 6, and then they need to high roll on the dragons. Most of the time it feels like this deck has to hit Kazakhstan, and then they have to high roll the treasures on the Kazakhstan. So lots of variance in this Druid deck. I don't think the deck is all that great. I know a lot of people are playing it right now. There's a lot of people playing it in High Legend, but a lot of those High Legend games are actually just mirror matches, so it's hard to tell if the deck is any good or not. Identical start to the last game. They've got the 4-1 on board. I don't think we're super worried about it, but it is going to punch us in the face for 4 every turn. So our opponent would like to play either Jerry Rig Carpenter or Cold Tooth Mine because they want to be able to tutor out the Lady Prestor. So with Cold Tooth Mine, they would take... draw more resources or more expensive, whatever the card name is that would allow them to draw the most expensive card in their deck, which would be Lady Prestor. We're hoping that they hero power because that's going to be the weakest play that they could possibly make. Okay, so they don't have anything good to do, so they're going to hero power us. and that's good news for us. We're just going to take the trade here. So right now, nulls are 2. This trade makes them worth 1. And if it hits... Did not hit... It did not hit reconnaissance. We're just going to pass turn. I was considering whether or not we needed to kill the 4-1, but it's not super important here. Here's a Shroud. Hopefully we can hit at least 1 null off of this. Question is, do we want to prep it out? If we prep it out, then we would be able to dagger and kill this. Also leave us the option of being able to use a reconnaissance. I think it's fine. Right, we did hit 1 null. So we could dagger up and punch this. Or we could just recon. I think I like the dagger play here. Keep our null at full health. Pass turn. Both Tricksters in hand now. Still hoping to hit a jackpot or a Blood in the Water to really be able to make use of it. Next turn it's likely going to be a reconnaissance. Find out what we have in this. And potentially they might play something with 3 health, in which case we could Tooth of Nefarian. Might be able to get a nice spell to combine with our Trickster for the following turn. So our opponent's still looking to tutor out their Lady Prestor. They could have Guff in hand. Doesn't look like they have any kept cards remaining, so we feel like we're in a pretty good position here so far. This deck does have high roll potential, though. Likely we won't be taking a lot of damage from the board here going forward, just because we're going to be able to take the board, and then we're going to start to pressure our opponent's life total. We just want to put as much stats on the board every turn as we possibly can and start punching our opponent in the face. Basically, turn 6, if they have the Prestor, ends up being a dead turn because they can't affect the board. They just put a 6-7 in play and hope to be able to start drawing well the turn after. Another Shroud. Wicked Stab only hits for 2. We could punch here and Tooth of Nefarian. We could Shroud to potentially try to hit the second null, but let's see how many minions we have left in our deck. We have Maestra, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minions in the deck, and we'd really be looking for null. So we would have a 1 out of 5 and then a 1 out of 4. Doesn't sound great. Don't want to take a whole lot of damage, and we need to make sure that we remove this, so let's check the reconnaissance. See what's here. Mountain Bear feels pretty good for next turn, I think. It's also going to go in our stash, make it harder for our opponent to be able to hit us in the face. So we're going to take this damage, we're going to Tooth this, and we're going to make the trade into the Peasant. It's going to take the armor. It for sure wasn't Hex, because we would likely end up hexing something on our own board when we replayed the Contraband stash. And the Paladin secret isn't great, because a lot of their minions are going to be low health anyway. They're really playing for the effects on the dragon. And we're actually getting just a little bit low here. Another Null, that's a premium top deck for us. It's likely just going to be Bear and then Null for the trade here. Does our opponent have Lady Prestor in hand? It's really rare for this deck to not have it on turn 6. just because they have so many ways to be able to tutor it out, even with the 40 card deck. But you know, that's the fire that you play with when you're playing one of these 40 card decks, is that you have to water down your deck with so many bad cards. You're never sure if you're going to be able to draw the good cards or not. Or rather, it's less likely that you're going to draw the good cards. It's another reason why I'm really not a fan of these 40 card decks. Especially with the limited number of sets at the beginning of the standard year, there's just not enough good cards to make these decks good. And so far, this has been the best deck that people have been able to come up with. Lady Prestor. Lady Prestor Druid is at the top of the 40 card deck food chain. Next turn, I'm likely just going to Shroud. We wouldn't mind hitting a Crab, getting Queen Ashara in hand. You know, Test wouldn't be bad considering we have another Mountain Bear inside of it. Maestra, of course, would be the low roll there. Our opponent's roping. They may have left. Concede incoming. Aquatic Form, still hoping to be able to hit Lady Prestor. They don't have it, but they did have a Silence. We're going to be able to draw some cards here. Unfortunate that they were able to silence our bear. I think we actually prep Shroud. And then we could still coin out a Crab. Not worried about dying. We did hit a Crab. That's exactly what we're going to do. And I want to make sure I swing first. I don't want to overwrite my weapon with a new weapon. And we'll pass turn. Next turn it might actually just be a test to be able to get another Mountain Bear in play. I believe they only play one Starfish. But we're almost at a point where we need to protect our face. May actually just Frozen Buckler first. That'll put that in the tests. Help us gain a little bit of life back. We have 11, 15. We have 16 damage at most, so we're definitely not going to be killing our opponent. We likely do want to get this down first. We won't die with it in play. Getting that in our tests and Contraband Stash is going to be good. May actually just be better to put stats on the board, though. So they just drew Lady Prestor. I'm assuming. They can't actually play it until next turn. I think we want to try to set up lethal here. And in order to do that, we just play the tests. Put as much stats on the board as we can. Both Pelicans, they'll be able to remove our bear, but we're still going to have other stuff in play. And everything's going face here. So they'll be able to remove the bear, but we get the 2/2 force. That would be 4, 10, 16, 21. We can do as much as 25. If we have to, we can Scabs. We have Frozen Buckler. We have this to remove some kind of a taunt, like the 1/3 Druid taunt. Could also trade this to try to find something else. Feels pretty good. If they play Lady Prestor, that's 6 mana. That only leaves them 2 mana to be able to do other stuff. So it's unlikely that they could draw an impactful dragon and play it in the same turn. It would have to be like, they would need an Innervate in hand, they would need a way to draw it, and it would have to be at a cost that they would be able to pay. So it feels pretty good here. I think we're going to be winning this. We just need to see what our opponent is going to be able to do here. I don't think they can remove enough damage to not die. And they can't kill us. Yep. Rope into concede. So again, you can see 40 card flat earth deck. That's why I call it that. It's really not that good. It folds under pressure. You're really depending on being able to high roll. I mean, to me, that Druid deck is pretty much similar to Mind Rogue. You know, it might be fun to play, although it may not be fun to play. I haven't actually played it myself. But you're really just looking to high roll your opponent. So as you can see, Thief Rogue's still really good, well positioned in the meta. I think, you know, we didn't necessarily have the greatest draws, we didn't have the worst draws, but we were able to put together a couple of wins here. So that's actually going to do it for the video. I'm Uncorrupt. Thief Rogue is good, it's fun. Get out and play it if you have the cards, and good luck out on the ladder.